All right, so get ready because today we're diving into a case that is both fascinating and deeply unsettling.
Right.
The unsolved West Mesa murders in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We've
Wow.
got police reports, articles, even witness statements, but
Really?
this puzzle still has missing pieces. So are you ready to try and put those pieces together with us?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
What's so compelling about this case is that it offers us a glimpse into, I guess, a darker side of society
Hmm.
and forces us to ask some tough questions about vulnerability justice and what it takes to uncover the truth.
Yeah, between 2001 and 2005, 11 women vanished from Albuquerque.
Oh, wow.
Their stories were tragically intertwined with the realities of sex work and drugs,
Right.
and for years their disappearances went largely unnoticed.
Wow.
Then a chilling discovery in 2009 brought their stories to light.
You're talking about the accidental unearthing of a mass grave on the West Mesa, right?
Exactly. Imagine a housing development project was underway, and during the construction of a retaining wall,
Uh-huh.
bones were uncovered.
Oh, my God.
Not just one or two, a whole mass grave.
Wow.
Satellite imagery later revealed tire tracks and disturbed soil in the area between 2003 and 2005, pinpointing a time frame.
That must have been a shocking discovery for everyone involved.
Yeah.
A stark reminder that beneath the surface of everyday life, there could be these hidden, unsettling truths waiting to be revealed.
Yeah, it's the kind of detail that sends chills down your spine. But beyond the shock value, we have to remember that these were real women with real lives.
Right.
They were daughters, sisters, mothers, people who were loved and are deeply missed.
It's crucial to acknowledge that and to consider the social context surrounding their lives. These women existed on the margins of society, often facing vulnerability and danger. Their stories and the fact that their disappearances initially went unnoticed speaks volumes about how society views and protects those involved in sex work.
Absolutely. So who are some of these women whose lives were tragically cut short?
Take Monica Candelaria, for example. She was only 22 when she vanished in 2003.
Wow.
And then there's Victoria Ann Chavez, 26, who disappeared just a month later. And we can't forget Salonia Edwards, a 15-year-old runaway from Oklahoma.
Oh, wow.
The fact that she was so young and the only African-American victim found in the grave raises questions about whether she was specifically targeted or if this was a tragic coincidence.
And you mentioned earlier that there might be even more victims.
Yes, the police believe that as many as 9 other women who vanished between 2001 and 2006 could be connected to this case.
Gosh.
They all shared similar backgrounds with the women found in the mass grave, which makes the possibility of a connection all the more unsettling.
So we have multiple victims, a potential pattern, and a desolate burial site. It's not surprising that investigators began considering the possibility of a serial killer, right?
Right, and that's where the nickname Bone Collector comes into play.
Yeah.
It's a chilling moniker,
Yeah.
but it reflects the gravity of the situation.
Yeah.
With so many lives lost, the authorities offered a $100,000 reward for any information leading to an arrest.
But with a case this complex, finding the culprit is like searching for a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
Were there any suspects who stood out early on?
There were a few individuals who immediately caught the attention of investigators.
Okay.
One was Fred Reynolds, a local pimp, who reportedly had photos of some of the missing women. However, he died of natural causes in 2009, taking any answers he might have had to the grave with him. But that wasn't the only lead.
Right. There was also Lorenzo Montoya, who lived close to the burial site.
Yes, Montoya's proximity to the burial site, less than 3 miles away, immediately raised red flags.
Wow.
And there were reports of trails leading from his trailer park to the area where the bodies were found.
But his connection to the case goes deeper than just location, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Montoya had a documented history of violence, particularly toward sex workers.
Right.
And chillingly, coworkers reported that he had bragged about killing women and burying them on the West Mesa.
That level of specificity is terrifying. But if he was responsible, how did he manage to evade capture for so long?
That's the truly disturbing part. In 2006, Montoya was killed by the boyfriend of a young sex worker he had murdered.
Oh my gosh.
This means his reign of terror ended before the West Mesa murders were even discovered.
It makes you wonder, if the West Mesa killings stopped after Montoya's death, could it really be a coincidence?
It's certainly a significant point that investigators considered. And it becomes even more intriguing when you add another piece of the puzzle, a home video found in Montoya's possession.
Okay.
The video, which was partially released to the public, showed him with an unidentified woman who appears to be deceased.
Wow.
The audio then suggests that he might have been preparing a body for disposal.
Oh, okay. That's disturbing on a whole other level. But even with a video suggesting this level of depravity, the investigation couldn't just end there, right? They
Yeah.
had to consider other possibilities, like Ron Irwin, the photographer from Joplin, Missouri.
Exactly. An anonymous tip led police to Irwin, and they searched his properties in 2010, confiscating thousands of photographs.
Oh.
He was known to visit the New Mexico State Fair, which is where some of the victims were last seen.
Uh-huh.
It's another detail that feels like a clue, but ultimately it didn't lead to a conclusive answer.
And then there's Scott Lee Kimball, a convicted serial killer who claimed to be investigated for the West Mesa murders, but denied involvement.
Right.
Did his claims have any merit?
It's hard to say for sure. With a case like this, every possibility has to be considered, even if it leads down a rabbit hole.
Right.
Remember, we're still piecing together this puzzle.
Yeah.
There's another name that emerges, a convicted rapist already serving time for other crimes.
You're talking about Joseph Blee, the mid-school rapist. He was linked to a series of attacks on young girls in the 1980s, but how does he fit into the West Mesa murders?
Well, in 2013, a breakthrough in a decades-old rape case led police to Blee, and DNA evidence connected him to those crimes, putting him behind bars for 36 years.
Wow.
However, during the investigation, police found women's underwear and jewelry that didn't belong to his family and his home, raising suspicions that he might have been involved in other crimes.
And didn't he make a chilling confession to his cellmate? Something about knowing the West Mesa victims?
He did. Blee allegedly admitted to hiring the West Mesa victims, referring to them as trashy, which is a dehumanizing term that reflects a disturbing mindset. And to make matters even more suspicious, a tree tag from a nursery frequented by Blee was found near the burial site.
So we have a known violent criminal, a potential confession, and a physical link to the burial site. Could this be our bone collector?
It's certainly possible.
Hmm.
But despite these connections, Blee was never officially linked to the West Mesa murders. So far, he remains a suspect, but the case remains open.
So it seems we've hit a wall with the potential suspects. We have 3 individuals with compelling connections to the case, but no definitive proof linking any of them to the crimes. What does this tell us about the investigation, and where do we go from here? It's like we're looking at a shattered mirror.
Yeah.
We have fragments of information, glimpses into the lives of the victims and potential suspects,
Right.
but the full picture remains elusive.
Yeah.
It begs the question, are we focusing too narrowly? Could there be something bigger at play here?
Right.
Something more organized than the actions of a single disturbed individual?
That's a crucial question. And it leads us to another theory that emerged during the investigation, sex trafficking. Remember, we're talking about 11 women who vanished, most of whom were involved in sex work.
Right.
Could this be a tragic consequence of a much larger criminal enterprise?
So instead of a lone wolf killer, we might be dealing with a network of individuals who exploited these women, potentially moving them across state lines, keeping them under their control, and ultimately silencing them.
That's the chilling reality of sex trafficking, and it's a theory that authorities couldn't ignore. They received an anonymous tip that connected the murders to a suspect from El Salvador, suggesting that this might not have been a localized operation.
It makes you think about those large events that attract people from all over, like the New Mexico State Fair. Could these events have been targeted by traffickers looking for vulnerable women to exploit?
It's a disturbing scenario, but it's one that aligns with how trafficking rings often operate.
Yeah.
They prey on those who are desperate, those who are seeking a better life, and they lure them in with false promises. It's a sinister manipulation of hope and vulnerability.
And if this theory holds weight, then the West Mesa murders might be just the tip of the iceberg. We could be looking at a network that stretches far beyond Albuquerque, encompassing other cities, states, maybe even countries.
The evidence suggests that this potential trafficking ring could have connections to Texas, Las Vegas, El Paso, Killeen, and even Denver. The logistics of coordinating such an operation, moving women across state lines, keeping them contained, disposing of bodies in such a calculated way, it all points to a level of organization and ruthlessness that's almost unimaginable.
It shifts the focus from a single perpetrator to a system of exploitation that preys on the vulnerable and silences those who might speak out. It's a horrifying thought, but one that demands our attention.
Absolutely. And while this theory may offer a broader explanation for the West Mesa murders, it doesn't make solving the case any easier. We're still left with unanswered questions. Who was the mastermind behind this potential trafficking ring? What were their motives? And how did they manage to evade capture for so long?
And let's not forget, we still don't have a definitive answer as to whether this was the work of a single killer or a more organized operation. It's a chilling reminder that even with advanced forensics and investigative techniques, some mysteries refuse to be solved.
And it underscores the human cost of these crimes. The families of these women are still waiting for answers, still seeking justice, still grappling with the pain of their loss. Imagine the torment of not knowing what happened to your loved one, of wondering if they suffered, of being denied closure.
It's a stark reminder that behind the headlines, behind the theories and the suspects, there are real people whose lives were shattered by these events. Their stories deserve to be heard, their memories honored, and their absence acknowledged.
And their cases deserve to remain open, to be revisited, as new technologies emerge, as new leads develop. Perhaps one day, a new piece of evidence will surface, a witness will come forward, a connection will be made that finally unlocks the truth of what happened on the West Mesa.
So we've explored two distinct possibilities: a lone serial killer driven by dark compulsions, or a sophisticated trafficking ring operating in the shadows. Both are terrifying in their own way, and both leave us with a sense of unease.
Right.
But is there anything else that emerges from this investigation that might shed light on these possibilities? Anything that might help us understand the complexities of this case?
There is one detail that I find particularly intriguing, one that speaks to the challenges investigators faced and the lengths they went to in their pursuit of the truth. Remember those thousands of photographs confiscated from Ron Irwin's properties?
Right.
Well, analyzing those images proved to be a monumental task.
I can only imagine we're talking about thousands of pictures, potentially spanning years, each one needing to be scrutinized for clues, for faces, for any connection to the missing women. It must have been like searching for a single grain of sand on a vast beach.
It was, and it highlights the dedication of those involved in the investigation.
Yeah.
They were determined to leave no stone unturned, no lead unexplored. And while those photographs didn't directly lead to an arrest, they demonstrate the sheer scale of this case and the commitment of those seeking justice.
It's a reminder that investigations like this aren't just about dramatic breakthroughs and sudden revelations. They're about meticulous analysis, painstaking attention to detail, and a willingness to pursue every possible avenue, even if it leads to a dead end.
Precisely. And it's that dedication, that unwavering commitment to uncovering the truth, that offers a glimmer of hope, a belief that even in the face of darkness and uncertainty, justice might still prevail.
So, with the bone collector theory and the sex trafficking angle explored, are we any closer to understanding what happened on the West Mesa, or are we left with more questions than answers?
I think it's safe to say that the West Mesa murders remain a chilling enigma. We have compelling theories, potential suspects, and a wealth of evidence, but the definitive answer still eludes us.
But even without that definitive answer, exploring this case has unearthed some unsettling truths about the world we live in. It's forced us to confront the vulnerability of those living on the margins of society and the dark realities of exploitation that often go unnoticed.
And it's reminded us that justice isn't always swift or straightforward. Sometimes it's a long and winding road paved with dead ends and unanswered questions. But even in the face of such complexity, the pursuit of truth, the demand for accountability, and the hope for closure must continue.
It's a sobering thought, isn't it? That even in a world where we have so much information at our fingertips, there are still mysteries that defy easy answers. And what's even more unsettling is that while we grapple with these theories and possibilities, the families of the victims are left with the agonizing weight of not knowing.
Yeah, it's a burden no one should have to bear, to lose a loved one in such a horrific way, and then to be left with a void of unanswered questions. It's um, it's a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit that these families continue to seek answers, to demand justice, to keep the memories of their loved ones alive.
And it makes you think about the ripple effect of these crimes. It's not just the families who are impacted, it's the entire community. A
Yeah.
sense of fear, of unease, of distrust can linger long after the headlines fade.
Absolutely. The West Mesa murders cast a long shadow over Albuquerque, and it's a stark reminder that even in seemingly ordinary places, darkness can lurk beneath the surface. But perhaps within that darkness, there's also a glimmer of hope.
What do you mean?
Well, think about the way this case galvanized the community.
Yeah.
The vigils, the fundraisers, the ongoing efforts to keep the victims' memories alive, they all speak to a collective desire for justice, for healing, for a safer world.
And that's not all. This case also forced a conversation about issues that often get swept under the rug, like the vulnerability of sex workers, the systemic factors that contribute to their marginalization, and the need for better support systems.
Right. It's a conversation that needs to continue.
Mhm.
We can't just acknowledge the tragedy of these murders. We have to address the underlying conditions that made these women vulnerable in the first place.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, we're left with a mix of emotions, sadness for the victims, frustration at the lack of a definitive answer, and a renewed sense of determination to learn from this tragedy and work towards a world where such horrors are less likely to occur.
I think that's a powerful takeaway. The West Mesa murders serve as a stark reminder that there are still dark corners in our world, that evil can exist in many forms, whether it's the calculated cruelty of a single individual or the cold, heartless efficiency of a criminal network.
But it also highlights the importance of never giving up on the pursuit of justice, of remembering the victims, and of using their stories to advocate for positive change. Maybe that's the true legacy of this case, that it compels us to look beyond the headlines, to confront uncomfortable truths, and to work towards a world where all lives are valued and protected.
Well said. And perhaps in doing so, we can honor the memory of the women of the West Mesa in a way that transcends the tragedy of their deaths.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a heavy one, but we believe these stories need to be told. Stay curious, stay informed, and until next time, keep asking questions.